Everyone is speaking about this as Canada drops their consecutive loss in the quarterfinal in the World Juniors after a disappointing tournament from top prospects, controversial calls, and everything in between. We're going to break down everything to do with this Team Canada tournament and more later on this episode. But before we get into that, I just want to give a huge shout out to everyone that's subscribed. If you're part of the 90% that's not subscribed, it's completely free and we can keep you up to date on everything to do with hockey. But Darius, let's just get straight into this, where we can see that Canada, of course, lost 4-3 in the quarterfinals once again. You can pause this, you can go through the box score itself, but just looking at the game as a whole, what was your initial thoughts when they ended up losing?
Well, disappointment, first of all, because Canada should have had the opportunity to go further in this tournament. But unfortunately, the roster selection for this tournament was absolutely botched. And we'll get into that later. We'll get into obviously Easton Cowan, which I know a lot of non-Leaf fans are going to love to get into, of course. But again, I think that in the game itself, were there controversial calls in this game? Absolutely. Were there controversial calls all tournament? Yes, but that is hockey and that is the double IHF as a whole, right? The reffing is a little bit different in a tournament like this than it is in North America or the NHL. And that's something that I think a lot of players in the CHL have to get used to, but it seemed like a lot of teams did get used to it besides Canada. So discipline was another thing that was an issue, and we'll get to that later in the video. But to start, I mean, the selection for this tournament was absolutely botched. I mean, you're leaving guys like top scorers Michael Misa in the OHL off of this roster. And I mean, they were playing musical chairs of Porter Martone being healthy scratched, Carson Rakoff being scratched. Why were these two who played together in Brampton for the Brampton Steelheads not playing together on the same line? You had instant built-in chemistry on this team's roster and you never capitalized on it. You never used it. So there's little things like that that was very puzzling in terms of players actually on the team. But again, so many good players, good talent left off of this team. And I believe that's the reason why they even got to that point. They probably should have won this game, maybe even won the tournament if they iced the best team possible.
And the biggest thing is going into this is the first time in tournament history that Canada has failed to advance beyond the quarterfinal round for consecutive years. This is just a disappointing season for Team Canada and for fans of Team Canada. And like you said, discipline was the biggest thing. This game alone, we've seen penalty minutes coming from players getting ejected from the game. Andrew Gibson had the knee in call that ended up losing Canada the game. I'm not going to say Andrew Gibson was the reason why they lost. The team underperforming and the coaching not making adjustments throughout this game was a major part, between the coaches not having discipline of actually shaking the lineup up. This is not an 82 game season. This is where you need to change on the fly. If you see something not working, you need to do it. If something's not working, practice, for God's sake. Get them on the ice to work on something. Discipline has been an issue. Everything in between made this tournament awful. But getting into it, it started where they failed to take games. This could have been a game against Switzerland or Slovakia, but instead you took on better competition, which ended up losing you the tournament. Did Canada deserve to win this? Probably not. Did they deserve to win this game? Most likely not. But just getting into the players that you were talking about, did you want to talk about some other players that were snubbed off this team?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple players, as you can see in this tweet. Most notably for me is Beckett Seneca, who's had a really good season and continue. He was the OHL Player of the Week last week, while these guys are at this tournament playing these games. Obviously, Michael Misa leads the OHL in goals, points, right? He's putting together a great season. He's going to be a potential top three, maybe top five pick in this year's draft. Obviously, the rest of the names on this list, they're snubs, right? Like they should have been on this team. And Team Canada scoring, you look at these numbers, was an issue in this tournament. You look at the guys on this list, this adds scoring. These are guys who know how to score. This is what they do, and they were left off the team. Very puzzling moves. I'll go back to Porter Martone in a must-win game in this tournament after losing to Latvia, which is almost inexcusable in that shootout, right? You have to win that game. Coming into a must-win game to take the group lead against the USA, you scratch the OHL's point per game leader or point per game percentage leader in Porter Martone. It doesn't make any sense to me. Very odd lineup decisions, roster decisions. Some of the guys who were cut that actually got invited, which doesn't include this, was puzzling as well. So very puzzling all the way through from the selection camp to obviously the roster decisions in game, or the lineup decisions in game, like I should say. And then there's guys who are not performing that are at the top of your lineup, like an Easton Cowan, which I think we can probably dive into now, because obviously there's a lot of noise around that, right? He's a Leafs prospect. There is a lot of backlash the last couple of games, I'll say, on Twitter, on Instagram, coming his way. Now, not any one guy can put a team on his back and win a tournament. We've seen it before, right? You need everyone to pull their weight in a tournament like this, especially in the juniors. And he's putting together, again, a great season in the OHL, but he, wasn't able to put the team on his back. But still, he shouldn't be relied upon to do that in this tournament. This is not a projected first overall pick, or a guy who, has played in the NHL or anything like that, right? He's played some exhibition games. But again, putting too much pressure on guys this age, that's what happens in this tournament a lot. We've seen it in the past. And there was a lot of guys that were selected for this team that didn't even get a sniff at getting a point in this tournament. So, it was more of a team effort. And not just that, it was the lineup. This could have been a much better roster, I think. And they left a lot of guys off that would have helped in certain areas that they were struggling off. And, they continue to do their thing in their junior leagues or wherever they're playing. So I do want to give credit where credit is due, though, Mark. I mean, Czechia is a great team. Canada did not deserve to win this game. They came back and obviously made it a little bit exciting at the end, but Czechia deserved to win this game, right? Like Sikora, the likes of Zidlicki was skating well in this game. Jakub Fiberger is going to be a really good talent in the NHL one day. So they have a really, really good team. Obviously, Juracek's brother, Adam Juracek, is on that team as well. So they have a great team. Credit where credit is due, but I still think that Canada probably could have iced a better team.
And this is actually going to be the second year where they can go for a medal. Canada just got outplayed this entire tournament. And kind of going back to you just speaking on players, we did see in this tournament players that were cut from this team, players that thought they should be on the team, liking tweets, Instagram posts of Canada losing to Latvia. This was just a butchered roster construction, in my opinion. There's so much politics going into players making this team. One thing I do want to touch on is just the fact, yes, Easton Cowan did not have a great tournament. We can see that from social media. You can see it from the eye test. He did not play well, but this is still a young kid. We have grown men saying quite bad things, worse than some of these tweets here, about a kid because he did not have a good tournament. It's not a one-man show. You're not going 1-on-5. You're not going 1-on-1. This was a poorly constructed team. We've seen Easton Cowan kind of pick it up in the third period. They hemmed him in a bit, but the biggest thing with this is it was just a downfall for Team Canada back-to-back years, not even going into a medal game. They can't win bronze. They didn't win anything last year. Is there any final remarks going into maybe the next World Juniors on what you think's going to happen with this team?
Well, I think that Hockey Canada, as in terms of management, has to completely reevaluate what they're looking at, because they built this team as if they were going into a 7-game series against one team, and that they could use certain players in certain roles, right? Like, I think a lot of these guys who made this team, like, congratulations, you made the team. That's a great accomplishment, and nobody can take that away from you. But some of them are role players, right? And they should have had more high-end talent on this team. You could have had 4 lines of elite scorers at not just the junior level, but guys who played in the NHL or who have been top 5 picks in the NHL draft, right? So I think that Hockey Canada has to take a big look in the mirror and reevaluate what they're doing and how they, select a team, and coaching as well. Dave Cameron, I think he's a great junior coach at the junior level and has been, especially maybe, 10 years ago at this point, but that might have passed them by at this point. And they have to certainly take a look at that again. I think that he is a very accomplished junior coach, but probably get a different voice in there. Some of the decisions in game were really puzzling. Some of the I know he might not be 100% responsible for it, but the power play decisions as well, that was something that Canada just couldn't get going at certain points in this tournament, and it paid off for other teams in that way. So they really have to take a big look in the mirror, how they select the teams, and then the coaching of the team as well. I think that there's got to be a different voice there for next year going into the future, because this result 2 years in a row, it's never happened before, and it's unacceptable at this level. Because yes, other countries are catching up. Czechia, credit where credit's due again, right? Great team. Sweden, all these other teams, but Canada's got to be in the mix, and they should have been.
What were your guys' thoughts on this loss for Canada? What's the biggest snub in this tournament? What was your favorite moment? What was your least favorite moment? Obviously, losing the game 4-3 is probably going to be most people's least favorite moment, unless you want to talk about Easton Cowan missing a pass. But let us know down in the comments. While you're down there, leave a like, subscribe, share this with your friends. We'll be back with another episode tomorrow, or we've released a couple episodes today, so go check those out. But I've been your host, Mark, with my co-host, Darius, and take care.